Hello and welcome to this week's Access Chat. I'm delighted that we're joined today by Caroline Desrosiers, who I had the pleasure of meeting at Enlightening a few weeks ago back in Washington, D.C. Caroline and I started talking about alt text and the work that she's doing with Scribly. Those of us that have been in the accessibility field for longer than we care to mention have been talking about alt text for longer than we care to mention. Mainly because it's sometimes the only thing that people talk about when we're talking about accessibility, that and captions. So I think it is really definitely an important topic, but Caroline is here because she's taking the pain out of it. So Caroline, Scribly doesn't just do alt text, it's sort of content accessibility solutions. But tell us a bit about yourself, how you got started and the premise behind what you're now doing.
Sure. Well, happy to be here. Thanks for having me on the podcast. So I started Scribly as a business to support alt text because 4.5 years ago when I started my company, definitely still a problem. There's a lot of bad alt text out there on the web still today, even though, as Neil said, it gets a lot of stage time. It comes up in conversations a lot. We talk a lot about alt text, but organizations are still struggling to get it right. So my company exists to provide those actual writing services to help get alt text done. But we also do a fair amount of training and consulting as well with companies just to move accessibility forward, content accessibility solutions. So not only images, but also videos and podcasts. So we can also support transcription services as well as audio description, script writing.
And when I said take the pain out of the creation of alt text, I was only half joking, because actually, whilst as an accessibility person, I understand the absolute importance of describing images, as someone with dyslexia, that process of description puts me through my own accessibility pain barrier sometimes, especially if I don't have access to speech recognition tools, which are becoming more ubiquitous, so it's making it easier. But it's a great example of how different parts of the community have different needs, and that actually we sometimes need to rely on services to be universally accessible. How did you get into the field in the first place?
Yeah, so before starting Scribly, I worked in digital book publishing, and that's where I first joined an accessibility working group and discovered that image descriptions were quite a challenge in publishing. And I was interested in starting a business that could help solve a problem. I just didn't know what at that time, but I was just fascinated by accessibility and also frustrated by the problem. I come from a family of educators, and it just kind of broke my brain when I heard that image descriptions were not making it into ebooks for the most part, and that the quality was really suffering. And I thought, well, this is an area that I could support because I love writing, I love working with writers, and I want to help solve this problem. So that was originally kind of how the idea came into my mind to start an image description business, and thought, well, this sounds simple. Just assemble a team of human writers that know what they're doing, develop a process for this work, and just work with organizations that want to get it done. That sounds pretty easy. Of course, it's not, but that original vision is still there. We very much prioritize quality above everything else, and we have a team of folks who just love to write and are passionate about communicating the content of images. So, yeah.
Caroline, welcome to the program. I have been watching what you're doing a little bit. So first of all, I thought it was funny, that you started in January 2020. So just want to say, wow, okay, good for you. That was cheeky to do that. But then, of course, around that time, besides that little pandemic thing we did, of course, AI is changing everything. And then AI came out, and I'm in love with AI. I know it's going to kill us all, but I still love what it's doing personally to my own work. And so, but at the same time, it has added a whole bunch more confusion to the marketplace. I know that I was doing a little training yesterday, and people were asking about this specific topic. Oh, the good news about alt text, we got that one solved. All you need to do is just go to AI, and AI will do the alt text description for you. Done, nailed, check. But of course, that is not true because, the alt text must be meaningful to the image, and only the designer, the developer, the content provider knows why you're using that image. And but at the same time, AI is going to simplify things for us with accessibility. And I just am proud of you that you started this business when you did, and I applaud it. But at the same time, wow, what a hard time to start a business when we actually, we saw when AI really, ChatGPT really started getting used, that companies immediately started laying off their content writers and their social media people. And we saw disability writers that have been known to write disability all of a sudden. Well, they're not needed because AI can just do it. Now, of course, we know AI is still learning, but I just wanted to, first of all, applaud what you're doing. Really, really appreciate it, especially as women entrepreneurs. But it's also a really intense time that you came in. But I also believe there's also a real opportunity for you because once again, we can toss it all to AI and say, figure it out. Of course, that's not going to work. We still as humans need to be involved. So I just thought I'd throw those really, really complicated questions at you as you did this during these intense times. But thank you at the same time.
Yeah. So yes, you've hit on a few points. Alt text has been a struggle to get right because you not only have the problem of actually writing the content, but also managing that within workflows. And that's where it breaks down. So over the past 4.5 years of being in this business, I've talked to a lot of organizations, and sometimes it's not the content writing part of it. Sometimes it's actually the workflow side of things where their systems don't support alt text, and it's very difficult to manage and store that information within the systems. And then it's just a challenge all around. So I think there are opportunities with AI to help finally scale this operation of writing image descriptions. And of course, there's so many images on the web. But as you said, it's absolutely important because we're talking about accessibility, that these image descriptions are right. People need to be able to trust in this information, and the authors of that content that are putting it out on the web need to ensure that it is correct and that it is the same level of quality as all of the other content that exists on that web page or in that digital document. That's the original reason I started Scribly, as I was talking about, just, that frustration that information should be accurate and true and you should be able to depend on it. That still exists today. I don't want to see any sort of quality suffer as a result of using AI. So I think humans absolutely still need to be in the loop and need to be owning this process and using AI potentially to help scale their operations, but not completely replacing humans in this work. So Scribly is actually getting involved in collecting research data and testing the generative AI results as alt text experts. That felt like something we really needed to do. So we're currently doing a study on the quality of generative AI descriptions and how that compares to human moderated generative AI descriptions and just human descriptions in general. So that's very important research that we need to do right now to make sure that we are hitting the mark with what alt text needs to be.
And I do want to just, I know that Antonio is going to come in here, so I'm not going to talk long, but I just think it's so important to have the quality, because what we've done is, and so the audience might say, oh yeah, then nice to have. It isn't nice to have. We need quality descriptions that really are meaningful. Otherwise, by us just putting out there I'm not image one, but anything careless image alt text. The reality is you do leave humans out when you're doing that. So I just hope that people are understanding the importance of this conversation, because we have to stop checking the easy box and say, okay, did it? No, there's something on there. Yeah, but it doesn't make any sense to me. And so I just want to validate that. But at the same time, I worry, Carolyn, that how are y'all going to be funded to do this work that needs to be done? So I hope also any investors and funders are listening, and that this is the kind of content we need, real good content that's meaningful. But I think it's wrong to keep asking all of us to do all this work for free. Just saying. So Antonio, let me turn it over to you.
I want to bring another topic, is that today when we navigate on the web, we can easily translate content, and we can get, it becomes readable. It is not perfect, but someone that might not be an English speaking can have a good understanding about what that is about. How do you think we should move English into alt text? Because many images of the web, English is the dominant language. How can a Spanish person, how can someone that is not native of a certain language can somehow experience alt text that is originally in English in their own language?
That's such an interesting question to solve. I am currently looking into, well, how can we start publishing alt text in more than one language? I'm looking at the the EU directive for accessibility coming out in 2025, where people need to, or organizations need to ensure that their websites are accessible. And all these different versions of websites that we have an English version, we have a French version, we have a German version. And on each one of those websites, we need to have alt text in that language so that it actually matches, the rest of the content. And so I think translation is going to be a challenge, because it's a challenge enough to get alt text into the alt attribute in English. And now we're talking about these other languages. But really, to create a great experience, we need humans in the loop involved in that translation operation, that service. That's absolutely something I'm thinking about, and that is critical to solve in the next few years. Yeah.
So that's it really is a challenge, made more difficult, I think, by providing that through translation rather than individual web pages with a language attribute set for each of the different languages. So but frequently, whilst it's possible to translate the text easily, that gets the image descriptions that get left behind. And we see similar with captions too. Captions are slightly more obvious because they're visible, and so therefore people recognize that there is a language difference and maybe a need to do it. But I think that it's quite easy for people to forget when they're translating pages. Leads me on to another point that we discussed when we were talking in person a few weeks back, which is about the persistence of the image descriptions, because quite frequently I find myself writing image descriptions and then having to sort of store them in notes and so on and so forth, because the image description doesn't stay with the image. So if you're using an image multiple times, it's not embedded in the image file. Therefore, you're having to apply that as an extra layer. And I would love to see that information, as digital standards change, because the JPEG's been around for a long time, the GIF or GIF has been around for years as well. As these sort of image standards change, it would be good to embed the accessibility data and the image description directly into the image, so that you're not constantly having to reapply or rewrite the image descriptions. Even when we are using the same image in slides. I think Microsoft have actually improved this now, but I used to have a real bugbear where you would copy and paste slides because you were doing presentations and you'd done the image description, and then go back and suddenly find that your slides are no longer accessible because you're missing the image descriptions because you pasted without formatting and it took it all out. So do you foresee a time when it's going to be possible to, have that metadata embedded in the images so that, that once you've done the work once, you're not having to redo it? Because, there's billions of images on the web, right? And there's only a few of you that are doing this professionally. And we know that AI hasn't really got there quite yet. So how can we stop the rework?
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing this up. It's actually already possible. So about two years ago now, I joined an organization called the International Press Telecommunications Council, and they manage the standards for metadata that you can embed in image files, so photo metadata. And I joined because they didn't have alt text and extended description as metadata properties within their standard. And I said, well, this should really be information that we can embed in images. So I joined and we submitted a proposal, and within a few months that the alt text and extended description properties were added to the metadata standard. So we can actually embed alt text and extended descriptions into image files and transport those descriptions with the actual image file between systems. So that's part of the standard now, and just needs to be supported by the different programs that are used. So that if we have embedded photo metadata, we drop that image into a document or upload it to social media, that alt text is imported into the system and populating alt text. So what you've hit on here, Neil, is this need to preserve the alt text that has been written, so we're not duplicating efforts and writing alt text over and over again, because that experience is frustrating, where even if we have the motivation and the goal and to write alt text and we do it, how do we save it? How do we get it from that social media post where I definitely wrote alt text over here to this system where I need it again? And that's where alt text is breaking down. That's where we're seeing challenges with workflows, and where we can put a lot of efforts forward to improving the systems that support alt text. That's an area I'm really passionate about, because that feels like an easy one. If we have humans writing alt text, then we can repurpose that if we just get organized around the systems that support alt text.
Yeah, and that was what was it? The IPTC, was that? Yeah,
right,
okay.
International Press Telecommunications Council. And also, we talked about language. There is a way to store alt text in multiple languages in photo metadata. So that is already supported, and that's something that we can use to improve systems for managing alt text in multiple languages. So this is something that I hope more systems and platform providers are paying attention to and supporting, because this would really help users and content authors across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I have the will to do it once. I don't necessarily have the spoons to do it multiple times. And I think that, okay, the standard's there. But yeah, it's then the adoption of the standards and the integration into the everyday systems, because that's when it's going to really come and work. And thank you for putting in the groundwork on doing this, because it really is super important as an enabler. So
absolutely,
that's great.
Yeah, and not to mention, we can also preserve the image description from the original creator of that image, or from the image source provider we're licensing that image from. Let's say you're licensing an image from Getty, and you can get access to the alt text that was written by Getty, or written by the original photographer. How fantastic would that be? That's, when we talk about the scalability of alt text, that's some scalability I can get behind, because we're human scaling it. We're just passing and preserving human written alt text, which is great quality and from the original authors that care about that image and want to make sure that that information is correct.
Absolutely. And Tony, did you have a?
No, I was just, Carl, you were talking about bringing that metadata to social networks, but you said that today when we want to write and implement alt text on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or on Twitter, all systems do it in different ways. How do you see that being what you're saying, being compatible with social networks to facilitate the life of editors, of people working for companies or agencies? We have to do that work, systematically.
Right. So there are a lot of systems operating behind social media platforms. A lot of people use social media scheduling services. There are many popular ones out there, and that's an obvious place where you could import alt text into a social media scheduling service where you're publishing to multiple platforms. So it's connecting the dots, right? Does that social media scheduling service you use support image metadata, or can they help you with managing your alt text in that system? And then do they have the integrations in place to send that alt text to all the social media platforms? So that's what I'm talking about in terms of workflows, how we can really dial it in and connect the dots here and help people improve the alt text, so they don't actually have to remember to manually add it every single time. That's the problem right there, is the requirement to manually add alt text and to ask users to jump through, multiple clicks and go into advanced settings and add alt text. That's not up to what we'd expect. Mm-hmm.
But we're also talking about those providers that will allow you to schedule. They're all I would say that looking at all of them, they were really late adopters of alt text. It took them years after the APIs and the systems allow it. Some of them who are very popular are only doing it for less than a year. So are you confident that now they will do it, or we're going to have another 5 years for them to do this right?
Right. This is where advocacy really comes in, and what I came up against, where when we added the alt text and extended description metadata properties to the standard, I thought within a year, we're going to see widespread adoption across platforms and programs that are looking for solutions. And I was surprised that just didn't happen, that it's out there, it's available, we can use this, and you're not doing anything about it. And there's this challenge coming up against, we're not hearing this from our users. This is just what you want. And we need to hear it from our users. And then in some cases, pointing directly to public forums where, yes, you are hearing this from your users 4 years ago. How are you not doing it? That's not an excuse. But it's that classic kind of, what are our internal priorities here?
Yeah.
And this keeps getting knocked down. It's always later with alt text. And it's surprising because it's such a basic accessibility requirement that we should have dialed in at this point. And, it's not just people not writing alt text. It's the systems they're using not supporting it.
Yeah, agree. And there's a couple of points I want to pick up on there. I mean, from a corporate point of view, we chose our platform for social advocacy because it did support alt text. It was one of the key requirements for us as choosing it. So as a group, right, not as an accessibility team, but as a large multi-billion dollar euro enterprise, we chose it because it supported alt text and other accessibility features. But the workflow is still a challenge because you still got to get humans to do it. But the thing that we've now got going on is that we're now actually getting reporting metrics from that platform as to the proportion of the posts that are created that have alt text. So we're able to then have measurements and track progress and nudge people along and so on and so forth. I think with the persistent metadata, if they were then to support the standards, that would be really helpful. And I wonder whether there's also a tag that might need to be added to say verified, written by human, or checked by human as meaningful. That would be also to be embedded, because then again you have you're building in a layer of trust into a system that the thing is meaningful, and you can automate and you can remove some of the additional manual work and rework. But I think that to come to the second point you raised, we've been working with Resistance to the things that we want that no one else has ever mentioned for a long time. This isn't uncommon. We see this with accessibility feature requests across all sorts of major platforms, and sometimes we end up having to sort of crowd, get the accessibility to community to share with each other feature requests to go and vote on them, because it's that kind of stuff that then starts to move it up the priority ladder. Yes, we put them in. You get told, yeah, put it as a feature request, and then of course someone that basically wants dark mode as opposed to something slightly more complex, everyone goes, oh yeah, I want dark mode. So there's 3,000 votes, right? And someone that wants image descriptions, you've maybe got 10 votes. Does it make it less important? No, but the prioritization process is skewed in certain ways. So there is that advocacy part that we still need to do to make industry adopt this stuff and see it as more of a priority, which I think is going to be ongoing work.
There's sometimes a simple reason why they don't say that they're not listening from their users, is because their users don't use their systems because they're not accessible. So you'll never hear from those users because you don't have them. That's the reason why.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You don't have any users because they're excluded. Yes. Okay, Deborah, sorry I interrupted. And Caroline, I'm sure you may have some points.
Well, and I just would like to say to Caroline, I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Being in the field a long time and seeing how money flows, it worries me about all this amazing work you're doing. And I'm hoping that some corporate brands are going to step up and support this kind of work, because I think that there's a lot that needs to be done at the base that we are doing that. I see brands doing a lot of things, but I'd like to see them do more things that are actually helping our community. So I think this right here is a perfect opportunity for funders to see what we need and what we need funded. Because so much of the funding I see coming in from funders, from investors and stuff, once again, appear to be trying to make one accessibility company more successful than another, and forgetting the point of we're actually working on something here to make sure all humans are meaningfully included. So I'm looking forward to a lot of people becoming more enlightened about what we're doing here. But what do you see, Caroline? If you could wave a magic wand and the world would work the way you think it should work, what would that look like? Because I think there are people listening now. There are, we appreciate the brands like Atos that has made these things, trying to blend them really into the DNA. They're not the only ones. We have other groups that have tried. I do a shout out to Siemens, SAP. There's not a lot, but there's some brands that are trying to do the right thing. But I still feel that most of the efforts are real check the box and not meaningful. I mean, like, I don't care what you put out there as an alt tag, just get something out there and don't say image one. Don't say graphic one either. So understanding the true needs, the true needs of our community, I think is something that corporations still need to do a lot of work on, and so do funders. But I was just, only because I don't want you, Caroline, to have to walk some of the path I've had to walk and others, where our work is not funded, but we're expected to do the work anyway because we care about this community being meaningfully included. But what would the world look like if we started really getting that people wanted to be meaningfully included, not just your little checkbox inclusion?
Yeah, if I could wave a magic wand, then organizations would hold themselves accountable to the alt text that they're publishing, just like any other content they're publishing. It's part of that process. It needs to be integrated into that process. Content, when we publish it, needs to be born accessible from the beginning. And just because something can't be done fast doesn't mean it shouldn't be done, right? This is an important part of accessibility of publishing content on the web. And we need to figure out these challenges. If it's writing the content, let's solve that. If it's the workflows, we can solve that too. It's just not an excuse anymore to me, and we need to be reaching for a higher standard at the organizational level.
Oh, even Neil was clapping during that. Usually, I'm over here doing all this, but well said, Carolyn. Well said. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you. I fully agree. Not everything can be done in a hurry. We're very much in one of those points in history where everything seems to be in a hurry again because there's a new technology and everybody's tremendously excited and competing. And I think we're back round the circle again where we're moving fast and breaking things, and I'm concerned about that. I think that sometimes we need to move purposefully and fix stuff, and as you say, making sure it's born accessible. So thank you so much for joining us today, spending the time sharing your knowledge and the work that you're doing, which I think is fantastic. And also thank you to our sponsors, Amazon and MyClearText, for keeping us online and keeping us captioned and accessible. So thank you, Caroline, and I really look forward to you joining us on Twitter for continuing the discussion.
Thank you all. Thanks for having me.